In this chapter, Anne's apology from the classic tale Anne of Green Gables, written by Lucy Maud Montgomery, Anne has offended their neighbor, Mrs. Lynde, in an outburst of temper. Within this cutting, we see a struggle between a proud, imaginative Anne and a dreadfully determined Marilla as they attempt to pacify the wounded old gossip. When Anne still proved refractory the next morning, an explanation had to be made to account for her absence from the breakfast table. Marilla told Matthew the whole story, taking pains to impress him with a due sense of the enormity of Anne's behavior.
It's a good thing Rachel Lynde got a culling down. She's a meddlesome old gossip.
Matthew Cuthbert, I'm astonished at you. You know Anne's behavior was dreadful, and yet you take her part. I suppose you'll be saying next thing that she oughtn't to be punished at all.
Well, now, no. Not exactly. I reckon she ought to be punished a little. You're going to give her something to eat, aren't you?
When did you ever hear of me starving people into good behavior? She'll have her meals regular, but she'll stay up there until she's willing to apologize to Mrs. Lynde, and that's final, Matthew. When Marilla went out that evening to take the cows from the back pasture, Matthew slipped into the house with the air of a burglar and crept upstairs. He tiptoed along the hall and stood for several minutes outside the door of the east gable before he summoned courage to tap on it with his fingers and open the door to peep in.
Anne? How are you making it, Anne?
Pretty well. I imagine a great deal. Matthew recollected that he must say what he had come to say without loss of time, lest Marilla return prematurely.
Well now, Anne, don't you think you'd better do it and have it over with? It'll have to be done sooner or later for Marilla's a dreadful determined woman. Dreadful determined, Anne.
Do you mean apologize? To Mrs. Lynde?
Yes, apologize. That's the very word. That's what I was trying to get at.
I suppose I could do it to oblige you. It'd be true enough to say I'm sorry, because I am sorry now. I'd do anything for you if you really wanted me to.
Well, now, of course I do. It's terrible lonesome downstairs without you. Just go and smooth things over. There's a good girl.
Very well. I'll tell Marilla as soon as she comes in I've repented. Marilla, upon her return to the house, was agreeably surprised to hear a plaintive voice calling, "Marilla," over the banisters. I'm sorry I lost my temper and said rude things, and I'm willing to go and tell Mrs. Lynde so. Accordingly, after milking, behold Marilla and Anne walking down the lane. The former, erect and triumphant. The latter, drooped and dejected. But halfway down, Anne's dejection vanished as if by enchantment. She lifted her head and stepped lightly along, her eyes fixed on the sunset sky and an air of subdued exhilaration about her. Marilla beheld the change disapprovingly. This was no meek penitent, such as it behooved her to take into the presence of the offended Mrs. Lynde. What are you thinking of, Anne? I'm imagining out what I must say to Mrs. Lynde. This was satisfactory, or it should have been so, but Marilla could not rid herself of the notion that something in her scheme of punishment was going askew. Anne had no business to look so rapt and radiant. Rapt and radiant Anne continued until they were in the very presence of Mrs. Lynde. Then the radiance vanished. Mournful penitence appeared on her every feature. Oh, Mrs. Lynde, I am so extremely sorry. I can never express all my sorrow. No, not if I used up a whole dictionary. You must imagine it. I have behaved terribly to you. I've offended the dear friends, Matthew and Marilla, who have let me stay at Green Gables, although I'm not a boy. I'm a dreadfully wicked and ungrateful girl, and I deserve to be punished and cast out by respectable people forever. It was terribly wicked of me to fly into a temper because you told the truth. It was the truth. Every word you said was true. My hair is red, and I'm freckled and skinny and ugly. What I said to you is true too, but I shouldn't have said it. Oh, Mrs. Lynde, please, please forgive me. If you refuse, it will be a lifelong sorrow on a poor little orphan girl. You wouldn't like to inflict lifelong sorrow on a poor little orphan girl, would you? Even if she had a dreadful temper? Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't. Please say you forgive me, Mrs. Lynde.
There, get up, child. Of course I forgive you. I guess I was a little too hard on you anyway. It can't be denied your hair is terrible red. I knew a girl once whose hair was every mite as red as yours was. When she grew up, it darkened into a real handsome auburn. I wouldn't be surprised if yours did too, not a mite.
Oh, Mrs. Lynde, you have given me hope. I shall always feel that you are a benefactor. Oh, I could endure anything if only I thought my hair would be a handsome auburn when I grew up. And now may I go out into your garden while you and Marilla are talking? There's so much more scope for the imagination out there. When Marilla returned home, Anne came out of the fragrant twilight with a sheaf of white narcissi in her hands. I apologized pretty well, didn't I? I thought since I had to do it, I might as well do it thoroughly.
You did thoroughly all right enough. I hope you'll try to control your temper now, Anne.
It wouldn't be so hard if people wouldn't twit me about my looks. Do you suppose my hair really will be a handsome auburn when I grow up? Aren't the stars bright tonight? If you could live in a star, which one would you choose? I'd like that lovely clear big one way over there above that dark hill.
And do hold your tongue.
Anne said no more until they were turned into their own lane. Far up in the shadows, a cheerful light gleamed out through the trees from the kitchen at Green Gables. It's lovely to be going home and to know it's home. I love Green Gables already, and I never loved any place before. No place ever seemed like home. Oh, Marilla, I'm so happy. I'm going to pretend that I'm the wind that is blowing up there in those treetops. There's so much scope for the imagination in a wind, so I'll not talk anymore just now, Marilla.
Thanks be to goodness for that.